Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the tampering penalties that were handed out by the NFL to the Atlanta Falcons and not to the Philadelphia Eagles. Earlier on in the show, we talked about everything NBA, including the Celtics going up 3-0 in the conference finals, what's going on with Luka and the Dallas Mavericks, and if they have a shot of coming back in this series, and updates in the head coaching search for the Los Angeles Lakers. We're going to finish off our show today, though, by talking a little bit about Alvin Kamara and him missing, just kind of walking out of practice at minicamp. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. Appreciate all of you guys for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Thursday afternoon. But like I was saying, we are going to finish off our show today sticking around in the NFL, talking a little bit about the Saints and Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, star running back for the New Orleans Saints, leaves minicamp, just walks out in the middle of practice. He's there in the beginning. His agent says he wants more money. He has 2 years left on a 5-year, $77 million deal that he signed at the end of 2020. Currently, as it stands, he is the second highest paid running back in the league. And this feels like a response to Christian McCaffrey getting paid that $19 million average annual value deal that he was just extended to earlier this offseason. Kamara sees this as, or at least from what I'm seeing, Kamara sees this as an opportunity to, get back to the top. He was second before. Now that running backs are starting to get paid, we saw Saquon get paid. We talked about him earlier. We saw, Derrick Henry get a nice contract. Josh Jacobs get a nice contract this offseason. These running backs are starting to get paid after a really down year for running backs getting paid. There was a whole, if you remember back to last offseason, there was that whole situation with all the running backs holding out and not getting contracts. But maybe it's just Christian McCaffrey, but it seemingly has kind of blown over a little bit. But Alvin Kamara, who is, like I said, the second highest paid running back in the league right now, is asking for more money. And maybe he's just looking for a restructure, trying to get a little more guaranteed money on his contract. But he walks out in the middle. Saints coach Dennis Allen says he has no idea where he disappeared to. He was there for warm-ups, they went back to the locker room, and he was gone. They haven't had a chance to discuss. I don't know if Alvin Kamara deserves another contract. This isn't like a Christian McCaffrey situation where, yes, Alvin Kamara is a double threat. He can run and he can catch, and he's very elusive. But you look back at last season, after he comes back from his suspension, he didn't run the ball particularly great. All of his yards and all of his really value was through the air. He would catch like 10 passes a game. He was one of those great check down options, and he's a great check down option to have. But he has the highest cap hit in the entire Saints organization this season. His cap hit right now is at $18.5 million. Again, the highest on the team. He's one of the last contracts that the Saints haven't touched. They restructured Taysom Hill's deal. And it's an interesting situation with Alvin Kamara because Alvin Kamara has not had that break. He broke out, he got paid, but he hasn't had that incredible season. I mean, he 3.9 yards per carry. He only had less than 700 yards and only 5 touchdowns. This is his 694 yards puts him at 33rd in the league. 5 touchdowns, barely top 25 in the league. And his average was awful. 3.9 was all the way up in 150 range. He he just was not very effective last season running the rock. So I don't quite understand why he's trying to get more money now. If I'm the Saints, I feel like I'm overpaying him. And I know that's kind of a rough situation to be in for a guy who, is still relatively young in this league. He came into the league in 2017. Uh in he is his 8th season in the league. He's only 28 right now. He's still got that quote unquote. He's still got like 1 or 2 years until that quote unquote running back fall off date, right? When you turn 30, running backs aren't supposed to be getting anything done anymore. But Alvin Kamara hasn't been that guy, and I know he was dealing with a lot of stuff. He's been dealing with injuries recently. In his last couple seasons, he played 13 games last year, 13 games in 2021, but this was by far his worst season. Yards per carry wise, only 2021 were worse, and ever since 2020 when he got that big contract, he hasn't been putting up those numbers. He hasn't had more than 5 touchdowns in a season since he had 16 in 2020. He's been, very good receiving the ball. I mean, he had 75 receptions. That's top, near the top of all running backs last season. But uh, he's been a little bit. He's been really disappointing, at least in the last couple seasons. Kelsey asks if I already talked about the Falcons. Yeah, we just finished talking about that in segment 4. They got docked a 5th-round pick and got fined $250,000. Not too big of a punishment. It doesn't seem like what they did tampering wise was like so bad, but it is important for the NFL to crack down on that kind of thing. Uh, Alvin Kamara again leaving minicamp. It's not a move that I quite understand. I do understand players holding out. I understand a guy like CeeDee Lamb after coming off the season that he is, and especially where the wide receiver market is after Justin Jefferson just signed that contract and Amon-Ra signed a big contract earlier. That market's been reset about 2 or 3 times just this off season alone. It's kind of it's not a move I quite understand because Alvin Kamara he can get fined, and I know that he'll be just fine. He isn't a guy that needs all this money, but he is someone that you know I think would benefit from being at camp. He's been struggling recently. It's a brand new team really around him. I know Derek Carr's there, but new offensive linemen, getting to know them, learning how to run within your blockers. It's it's just not something that I would do if I was Alvin Kamara. And I don't think the Saints are going to give him a new contract. And I know that his agent is trying to get that for him, and that's just him being a good agent trying to get him more money, but Alvin Kamara isn't going to get paid again. He hasn't shown that he deserves to get paid again, and he's got 2 years left on his deal. So the Saints have no reason to rush this. If Alvin Kamara comes out and he's able to rebound, have a great season, which I think he absolutely has the ability to do, he just wasn't effective on the ground last year. And I know the Saints had a really awful offensive line last season. They've done a little bit to help shore that up a little bit. So maybe he can be better this season, but we will see what happens in the future with Alvin Kamara. He's missing OTAs for now. We'll see if he's back tomorrow. I don't think he's going to get paid. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this and anything else in the world of sports. Tomorrow we will be back talking some NHL, talking more NFL news, talking anything else that happens around the world of sports. We'll have our MLB power rankings on Friday. So I'll see you tomorrow for all of that. Thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. You all have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool. I'ma pull up, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn it.